Yeah,
It was really bad snow last meeting.
yeah.
It was Will. Oh, probably maybe Will calling me to see where I
Yes,
am.
because I asked
Yeah.
him if you mentioned.
I said that, good idea.
I was speeding.
Actually, when I went up to calendar and came out and it wasn't raining from the MTO weigh scales.
Yep. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Wednesday, May 1st, museum board meeting, and it is 6:36. Disclosure of any pecuniary interest. Anybody? So I need a first and a second to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Mary? So I need to sign it if you want. Yeah.
So Mary and
Nora. And staff updates.
all in favor.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. All in favor? Staff updates.
All right, so we've got funding for both of the students' positions. One is from the Canada Summer Jobs Funding, which is federal, and another from the Summer Employment Opportunities Program, which is a provincial one. So that's lovely. So you've had a chance to look at the engineering report for the gift shop / office building. And we have been investigating various options for temporary fixes, and the public works crew was able to do a little bit of work there this morning. So we're just waiting on the engineer to come and look at it and approve whether or not we'll be able to use the building this year, but it sounds pretty hopeful, so hopefully.
So you've done temporary repairs to get us through the season, is that what I'm
Yes.
understanding here?
Yes.
Okay, and then in the fall, will we,
Well, that depends. Our application to the Ontario Trillium Foundation for a grant to make permanent repairs is still under review. We likely won't hear back from them until midsummer or late summer.
And I did try to call the Ontario Trillium Foundation when we got this newest engineering report to see if I could forward it to them. You know, but because the grant application closed on March 19th, they won't allow any additional information onto it because they're only considering the information that was there. But I did ask to see if we could at this time know, and I asked if there was if they knew when it would come. Again, as Jillian said, it's not going to be till July or August that we hear whether we get the grant to be able to do the permanent repairs as you asked. But we had a number of discussions about doing temporary repairs to open it for the season. And our public works crew went in and did some repairs after in consultation with the engineer. If they did this, would that be sufficient, you know, for it? And they've done that, and then our chief building official and engineer will go back and inspect it and make sure that we're good to go. If there's any concerns with it, we do have a working alternate operations plan in place. We're keeping our fingers crossed that the temporary fix to get us through the season will be sufficient for them to pass it.
So if the gift shop office building remains closed, the merchandise and the point of sale systems will move to the log church. The way the debit machine works means we don't need a Wi-Fi connection, so it will work in that building. All right. So the next thing I have is just starting on advertising. We're still in conversation with the Commanda Museum about if they were interested in doing a shared brochure. So just on the off chance that that's the option that they decided to choose, I've brought the draft of the slide for our museum so everyone can take a look. And then if you approve and that's where they want to go, we can start printing those out. If they decide not to go with that, I'll just create another side and bring it next meeting. So if you all wanna
Yeah.
take a look.
So where will we show these brochures?
So at anywhere that's willing to display them, normally we have, some at the museum, we take some to the Commanda Museum, Calendar Museum, the North Bay Museum.
Sorry.
And then
What
if,
about businesses?
if businesses are willing to have the brochures, because normally we'll do posters.
Mhm.
But if they're willing to put the brochures up as well, then we'll move some up. So there are a few more event updates. So the fire department has finally agreed to run the barbecue for Heritage Day once again. And I've talked to Bob Bartlett and he's kindly agreed to provide a blacksmithing demonstration for Heritage Day, which is always really popular. So that's exciting. And there are a couple of items for the Fall Fest. I know that's quite a ways away, but the earlier we can sort of get things settled, then hopefully we'll get more vendors, more interest. So the trunk sale that's run by the Recreation Committee, which is on the same day, historically they've run their event from 9 AM to 2 PM, was set up at 8 AM. I was wondering, does that agree with everyone? Normally we start 10 AM and run to 3, but most of the vendors start packing up at around 2:30, 3 anyway. So with that,
Yeah, I think so. That
Mhm.
Yeah.
puts you in agreement.
Might as be the same, might as well be the same as theirs,
Yeah.
for sure.
yeah. Okay. And historically, there's been no cost for vendors to set up a booth. I believe the Recreation Committee is considering, asking vendors to donate something for the food bank. Would we like to continue to make it free for vendors for the Fall Fest and Market? Do we want to start asking for a donation to the museum? Like our tours are normally by donation, so it's whatever people want to give, or do we want to keep it free?
Personally, I like to see it kept free. I think we get more vendors that way. And because we're new at it with the vendors, we haven't had that many events with vendors. I think we need to build that up before we start thinking about charging them. That's just my opinion anyway.
I think it has certainly been a good opportunity for artists who are not normally vendors at craft sales.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
easy
It's easier for them to.
experience.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So the idea of this is gonna threefold?
Yeah, so the idea is that the Nipissing Museum will be on one side and then the Commanda Museum will be on the other side.
Mhm.
That's just if they are,
So
one.
how would that work to fold them in, or you just leave it flat like that?
No, it would get folded, and so when it gets folded, tri-fold, the
Yeah,
Nipissing Museum title page will be on one side and the Commanda Museum title page will be on the other.
yeah.
So I'm still in conversation with them. They're undecided as yet if that's the route that they want to pursue, but I know that they have events that are starting earlier than our museum, so if they do decide to go that route, then I just figured we might as well be ready, because then we get more
Yeah.
advertising for us as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they aren't going any farther south though to pick up anybody to work with right down the Rosso Road?
I'm not sure, but these are just sort of the regular season brochures. It's
Mhm.
just basic information, open hours, the events for the year, a little bit of information, contact info.
Yeah, and you haven't heard anything
Well,
from them?
we've been in conversation with them. They're not sure whether they want to go this route or.
No,
if they
I
want-
don't mean just command, I mean, has there
Oh,
been any
okay.
conversation with anybody, like anybody at the council level, like getting any information that these people want to do something
No,
for it, all the way down to Russell?
I think it's still early in the season
yeah,
though.
nobody's open. The nearest museum would be, because Macro doesn't have a museum,
No.
Their
Um,
closest neighbor.
But couldn't we get in touch with the town councils
Yeah,
ahead of
that's right.
time?
Mhm.
That was what was
And that
done
would
in
put a
nineteen
burn there
seventy-four.
on it for a while anyway.
Send letters to, the municipalities, to each of the
Mhm.
counselors and
Mhm.
staff.
Just kind of like, here's what we're doing for this occasion. Are you doing anything that
Yeah, there
we
is a
can hook up with stuff? or-
There is a Facebook page, which I am a part of. I haven't received any
Anything?
updates from it as yet. But I was hoping that closer to probably the May long
Yeah,
weekend, we might
yeah,
hear
yeah.
something more.
The
Yeah.
open times.
The old Nipissing Road goes through Magnetawan,
Yeah,
Packer, Magnetawan.
There's a museum in Magnetawan.
Yes. That would be the closest, I would think.
I think, yeah, there's one museum and one historical society that are in the towns en route.
I wouldn't mind seeing a map to show where the. where
Oh,
some
there will
road
be a
goes.
map. There will be a
So-
map.
Yeah. No, it was quite a to-do when they did it
Yeah.
in 74.
Oh, yeah, because I've got the Moore family donated some photographs and some of the, like the event programs and things like that. And it sounds like it was a humongous event. And it was well attended, so I'm not sure we'll get quite the same turnout, but
No, no. I'll have to. I'll be going to some meetings down that way anyway, not about this fact, but I'll find out because of
Okay.
historic things, so.
okay, that actually reminds me of something. So when I talked to the person who was selling the old Nipissing Rosso Road information booklet online, they were out of copies. But then Dad from the Commanda Museum said, I believe it was in Panawan, possibly in the museum or the municipal office. They had copies for sale. Can you keep an eye out? Like, even if it was just one copy for the museum, because I've been borrowing one from a
That's
resident.
from that year. Is it from
I
that year?
don't
or
know
is
if
it?
it's from that year, but it's all about the route that the Rosso Nipissing Road took and the landmarks and the people that their stories have remained.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, well, like I think I mentioned it last time, Bob's great grandfather was, one of the ones that did the corduroying on the roads, and you know what that is.
The corduroy,
Yes. That's how they made a road.
okay.
They took logs that were
Yeah.
a certain size
Oh, yeah.
and laid them side by side.
So-
Saved you getting into a lot of bogs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Alsace Road still has a corduroy in it.
Yeah.
does it really?
Yeah.
With that much
The road,
gravel.
out,
Oh, okay.
O'Connor line out in Chisholm has corduroy in
It
it
does
too.
so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you
Cool.
grade dig deep enough, you can find corduroy.
I don't
I
think
bet in a
anyone
lot of
else is
roads,
digging
if
up
you
the
dig deep
Alsace
enough,
Road,
you'll
though.
find
You would. Any low spots, that's, yeah.
All right, so moving on to exhibits. So we are gonna be rearranging things in the church. And some items will be moved to the community center temporarily to make space for the new exhibits. To celebrate Heritage Day. So if you wanna take a look at some of the forms that I put at each spot, there is one for Family History Collection Project, potential participants. So instead of discussing things at the meeting, for the people that whose names you can think of, and you have contact information, if you could get in touch, ask if they're willing to participate, and, write down their preferred method of contact, and which route their family took when settling in Nipissing, any other notes, and bring those back to the next meeting so that I can start contacting people. I think that will be the best way, to get people to participate. Without putting pressure on anyone. Yeah, so if you bring them back to the next meeting, or if you email them to me, or if you drop them off at the Nipissing Township office, that would be great. I would really appreciate it. There's a few people that I will be contacting, but I know you folks are more knowledgeable and know more people, so I'd really appreciate that. So the next thing we have to discuss is a 5-year exhibit plan. So one of the things that I've been doing while I've been cataloging or entering the paper forms into our past perfect cataloging system is making a note of what items are relevant to what particular themes and subjects, so that as we're moving forward with rearranging the informational systems in the museum, we can start building a repertoire of, or a good base of permanent exhibits, which will assist visitors in understanding and visualizing the history of the township and what life was like. And then these can help support and give context to temporary exhibits that can be switched out every year or every couple of years. So wherever possible, trying to include some small text panels and photographs and maps, as well as the artifacts themselves. And so the things that occurred to me as eras and subjects that I would like to see represented from what I've learned from being at the museum are things like the Indigenous history of the area, then the settlement pioneer area, the land grants, the logging, the growth that happened in the latter half, or the latter quarter of the 1800s, the socioeconomic changes of the first half of the 1900s, so the 2 world wars, the Depression, and then the latter half of the 1900s. So some of that will kind of include things like trade and travel routes, the Robinson-Huron Treaty impact, the logging industry, trapping, the surveys, the construction of the colonization roads and the railways, and steamboats, how the population growth helped change the economy and the lifestyle in the area, tourism. So that kind of thing, as well as sort of biodomes and biodiversity in the area. It has changed with things like logging operations and the tourist industry and stuff like that. So with that in mind, if there are any themes or subjects that the museum board would like to see represented either as a permanent exhibit in the museum in the next 5 years, or a temporary exhibit in the next 5 years, just so that as I'm going through the cataloging, I can make sure that all those things get captured. So does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? Okay, so with that being said, the plan for this year, we've got the heritage families, we're focusing on the road, and including things like the surveys of the township area. And then for a theme for next year, if I could suggest the waterways. So instead of focusing on the Nipissing-Rosso Road, focus on the waterways that brought in another load of early settlers, as well as the trade route that was already established along that route. And then the next year, I would like to be in contact with some of the Dokis First Nations and Nipissing First Nations and see if we can get a little bit more information about the Indigenous history of the area without stepping on anyone's toes, just ensure that we can accurately as possible represent the impact that those people's had on this area and the pioneers that settled here and the history relevant to what became the township. Yeah, and another one would be tourism. So the idea is that each year, along with the theme, we'll be adding a certain amount of permanent exhibit and a certain amount of temporary exhibit, so that we're building the repertoire gradually. So if we want to discuss that at a future meeting and decide the themes for the next 5 years, I think that would be extremely helpful in moving forward. And if anyone needs a list, just let me know. Okay. All right. So the next thing on the list, and you'll see you have a form for that as well. So the idea was brought forward to have signs at historically significant landmarks. So a few examples of that would be the churches, the hamlet schoolhouses, like the separate schools where the general stores were, where the Nipissing Hotel was, etc. So if there are landmarks that you know of or your friends and neighbors know of that is of historical significance, where we might want to consider putting one of these landmark plaques, if you could write them down as they occur to you.
Are you gonna set it up like the heaven calendar with the plaques on the buildings and then you can,
They'll probably not be on the buildings. They'll probably be,
no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that.
Okay.
I mean that kind of plaque where there has, what do you call those little squares where you click on
QR
and it
code?
gives, yeah, and they give you the information.
I'm not sure, that has not been discussed what kind. Essentially, I think the idea is to have some sort of photograph, some sort of text. The possibility of a QR code could certainly be discussed. I'll write that down. But the idea would probably to have them on the road allowances or like
Like
just
some places the
within the-
buildings aren't gonna be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them probably aren't, but just to capture where these landmarks were in the village now that they're gone, and most people don't realize they were ever there. So that's what that is for. Again, if you could return to me at some point, this is more of a long-term project. And we're still in the research feasibility stage. But if we at least have a list of landmarks that the board would like to see represented on a plaque, that would be extremely helpful. So does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. All right, so another thing I received recently, Andrew Hine got in touch. He's written 2 books of tales from early Prairie Sound District. And he is wondering if the museum is interested in selling them in the gift shop. So the wholesale price is $17 and the retail price would be $25. So
His books are pretty good.
I was gonna say, I looked at the snippet on Amazon and I quite enjoyed it.
He has a lot more books than that. These are just the latest 2.
Yeah. He did mention that there's no minimum amount, that he does sell them in some of the local museums around here, and they usually buy 1 or 5 to 7 copies at a time. And then,
So you're not stuck buying a big lot.
So we could buy 5 books, sell them, he'll send us 5 more.
Yep.
Which
That
is good.
sounds
Yeah,
reasonable.
that sounds
Yep.
good.
favor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do 5 copies to start. So just more of a heads up that there will be a collections update at the next meeting. There will be quite a few artifacts that have come in over the last year or so. So instead of everyone sitting down and looking through it at the meeting itself, details about the items will be sent via email, or we can print off a package. And if you could just take the time to look at it before the next meeting, that way, once we get to the meeting, we can get through each artifact pretty quickly, just because there'll be quite a lot of small pieces. So there's some that are more or less relevant to the township, so it's worth taking a look at. And that is all I have for you guys today.
Has anybody else got anything they?
I'd like to apologize for forgetting. Went from the greenhouse, sat down, opened the beer, and the phone rang. It was Chris.
Did Bonnie send a note?
No, she didn't. There's that teacher coming out again.
Did Bonnie drink your beer?
She probably will now.
All right, oh, I guess the last thing would be is everyone okay with this half brochure? Or are there any changes that anyone would like to propose?
I like it for you.
It's nicely done. That'd be,
Looks good.
yeah.
We can also send out a copy to your email, like if you wanna look at it, just see it and that too.
Oh, I think it's fine.
Yeah, I think it's done nice.
Good.
All right. Yeah, so, did you hear Amanda might be sharing the brochure, that's why there's only one side at the moment.
Okay. Oh, on
So-
that note, I was talking to Ted Hoffman the other day.
Oh,
Had
okay,
dinner with him, actually. So he is going to approach the other end. And
Okay.
give the Hoffman story,
okay,
so. Cause he's the last of the Hoffmans
okay.
of that generation.
And just to recap, there were some forms that were on the desk in front of you. So the first one there.
No, the other way.
Yeah,
Okay.
so instead of discussing names at the meeting, if you have names that you know of and you have a chance to talk to them and get their contact information, write them down on the list and bring me the list, if you
Okay.
please.
The Ted will be up on there, right?
You can make a note that he's already.
Yeah, because he said he
Agenda,
would be
but
talking
just
to
maybe-
you,
Central
I don't
nephew in
Yeah, they never-
Waterford.
Come on.
Yeah.
It makes me feel.
So we have a big camp where we have all the guys.
Do you remember what the date of our Heritage Day is? Offhand? I took the rest of my papers out of my,
So.
Well, that's what I figured, you sort of all each have your.
I just want that
you know,
right on here, so when I'm
culture
talking to
different
somebody, I
areas
can
of
tell them.
people. So if you each go out and talk to the folks that you know.
So when we're talking to somebody, we're asking them to come to Heritage Day, are
August
we?
18th.
So you're just asking if they're willing to participate in giving an interview at the museum. So not
Okay.
necessarily on Heritage Day, not necessarily in front of a huge crowd. It can be up to what they are the most comfortable with. If they want to come to Heritage Day and talk to folks, about their family history, great. But if they would prefer to just talk to one person and they're willing to be recorded, or they're willing to have the interviewee take notes, we can sort of accommodate whatever makes them feel the most comfortable. And then as much information as I receive prior to Heritage Day, we'll see how we can incorporate it in the exhibits and in the programming. But this is something that, it's not just for this Heritage Day, it's for the museum for the rest of the time. So, yeah.
Need a
So,
motion to adjourn. Good. So need a motion to adjourn.
I'm not making that one.
I will.
Okay.
More than inappropriate.
I need a seconder.
Says meeting, cause yeah, you'll forget. I mean, it sounds silly, but.
All in
I have an
favor?
alarm. Set on my phone.
Yeah.
I wrote it on my calendar
I
finally.
put everything on my phone, set an alarm.
Read the motion.
So that it comes in, then I can go
Already
look and see what's
put
going on.
stuff in it.
Oh, yeah?
And go false.
Do you belong to the over
I
fifty?
know.
Calendar agent? They've got a really good trip coming up in August.
So that the Board of
Barn Falls
meeting is
Day.
hereby adjourned at 7:05. Next week meeting will be held June 5th at 6:30, 2024.
But you're gonna get an email telling you.